My brother kicked my dog who uses a wheelchair because he couldn't walk properly. He called him useless. He broke his little paws. I still remember the exact sound. The thud of his boot against Benny's small body. The yelp that came out of my dog, so high-pitched and desperate that it didn't even sound real. I was standing in the kitchen making coffee when I heard it. I dropped the mug and it shattered on the floor, but I didn't care. I ran into the living room and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. My brother Marcus was standing over Benny, my 3-year-old beagle who had been paralyzed from the waist down since a car accident 8 months ago. Benny was on his side, his wheelchair twisted at a terrible angle, his front paws bent in ways that paws should never bend. He was whimpering and trying to drag himself away, but he couldn't move properly. Marcus was laughing. "What did you do?" I screamed. I pushed him so hard he stumbled backward into the wall. "What the hell did you do to my dog?" Marcus just shrugged like I was overreacting. "Relax," he said. I barely touched him. He was rolling around in that stupid contraption blocking the TV. I told him to move and he didn't listen, so I helped him. Helped him. Helped him. I looked at Benny's twisted paws and the terror in his eyes, and something inside me snapped completely. I had spent 8 months nursing this dog back to health after a drunk driver hit us while we were walking. I had paid thousands of dollars for his custom wheelchair. I had carried him up and down stairs and cleaned him when he couldn't control his bladder and held him during thunderstorms when he was scared. And my brother had just kicked him like he was garbage. "Get out," I said. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely form words. "Get out of my house right now." Marcus rolled his eyes. "Come on, it's just a dog. A broken dog at that. You should have put him down months ago instead of wasting money on that ridiculous chair. He's useless anyway. Can't walk, can't run, can't do anything a normal dog does. I did you a favor." I grabbed my phone and called 911. Marcus laughed when he realized what I was doing. "You're calling the cops on your own brother over a crippled dog? That's pathetic. Even for you." I ignored him and gave the dispatcher my address. I told them someone had just assaulted my disabled dog and I needed help immediately. The dispatcher said they would send someone right away. Marcus stopped laughing. "Wait, you're serious? You're actually going to have me arrested? Over that thing?" He pointed at Benny, who was still whimpering on the floor. I didn't answer him. I was already on my knees next to Benny, trying to assess the damage without hurting him more. His front left paw was definitely broken. Maybe both of them. He was panting heavily and his eyes kept rolling back in his head from the pain. "The cops are going to laugh at you," Marcus said. "No one cares about dogs like that. They'll probably agree he should be put down. Save everyone the trouble." I looked up at my brother, this person I had known my entire life, and I saw a stranger. A cruel, heartless stranger who thought it was acceptable to hurt something small and helpless just because it inconvenienced him for 30 seconds. The police arrived in less than 10 minutes. 2 officers, 1 male and 1 female. They took one look at Benny and their expressions hardened. The female officer, her name tag said Rodriguez, knelt down next to me. "What happened here?" she asked gently. I told her everything. How Marcus had been staying with me for the past 2 weeks after losing his apartment. How he had complained constantly about Benny and his wheelchair. How I had come running when I heard the yelp and found Benny on the ground with his paws twisted. Marcus tried to interrupt several times, but the male officer, Officer Chin, kept him at a distance. When I finished explaining, Officer Rodriguez took photos of Benny's injuries. She documented the position of the wheelchair, the angle of his paws, everything. Then she turned to Marcus with a look that could have frozen water. "Sir, animal cruelty is a felony in this state. You're under arrest." Marcus's face went white. "You can't be serious. It's just a dog. A disabled dog. It can't even walk." Officer Chen was already pulling out handcuffs. Tell it to the judge. They read him his rights while I held Benny as carefully as I could. He was trembling violently now, either from pain or fear or both. I whispered to him that he was safe, that I would never let anyone hurt him again, that we were going to the vet and they would fix his paws and everything would be okay. As they led Marcus out to the patrol car, he shouted over his shoulder. You're going to regret this. I'm your brother. Blood is thicker than water. You're choosing a worthless, crippled animal over your own family. I didn't respond. I was already gathering Benny into my arms as gently as possible and heading for my car. The emergency vet was 20 minutes away and every second felt like an hour. The vet's name was Dr. Patel and she had been Benny's doctor since the accident. When she saw his paws, her face fell. Oh no, she murmured. What happened? I told her through tears that wouldn't stop falling. She didn't say anything judgmental. She just nodded and took Benny into the back for x-rays and treatment. I sat in the waiting room for 3 hours, staring at my phone, watching it blow up with messages. My mother called first. She was hysterical. How could you do this to Marcus? She screamed. He's your brother. He made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. You're going to ruin his life over a stupid dog. I hung up on her. She called back immediately. I sent it to voicemail. She called again. And again. And again. I turned off my phone. Dr. Patel came out eventually. Her expression was serious but not hopeless. Both front paws are fractured, she said. The left one is worse. He'll need surgery and several weeks of recovery. He's also in shock from the trauma. I have him on pain medication and fluids right now. He's stable but it was a close call. The force of the kick could have caused internal bleeding. I asked how much the surgery would cost. She said around $4,000. I didn't hesitate. Do it. Do whatever he needs? She nodded and put a hand on my shoulder. He's lucky to have you. Most people wouldn't fight this hard for a dog with his challenges. I told her Benny wasn't a challenge. He was family. Real family. Not like the people who shared my blood. I spent the night at the vet clinic, sleeping in a chair next to Benny's kennel. They let me stay because Dr. Patel understood what this dog meant to me. When I turned my phone back on in the morning, I had 47 missed calls from various family members and over 100 text messages. Most of them were variations of the same theme. How dare I, Marcus was family. Dogs were replaceable. I was being dramatic. I was ruining Christmas. I was tearing the family apart. One text stood out. It was from my father, who had been silent my entire life about everything that mattered. He wrote, I raised you better than this. Those 5 words hurt more than all the screaming from my mother. Because he hadn't raised me at all. He had been absent, checked out, letting my mother coddle Marcus into the entitled monster he had become. And now he had opinions about how I should handle that monster's cruelty. I didn't respond to any of them. I stayed with Benny through his surgery and his recovery. I took 2 weeks off work to care for him. I held him when he cried from the pain and celebrated with him when he started putting weight on his healing paws. I bought him new special boots to protect the surgical sites and adjusted his wheelchair to accommodate his recovery. Marcus's court date came a month later. I showed up to testify. So did my entire family, but they were there for him, not for me. My mother glared at me across the courtroom like I was the one who had committed a crime. My father wouldn't even look in my direction. My aunts and uncles and cousins, people who had known me my entire life, sat behind Marcus like a wall of support. The prosecutor showed the photos Officer Rodriguez had taken. Benny's twisted paws. The terror in his eyes. The crooked wheelchair. She played the 911 call where my voice shook with fear and rage. She brought in Dr. Patel as an expert witness to explain the extent of Benny's injuries and the cruelty required to inflict them. Marcus's lawyer tried to argue that it was an accident. That Marcus had just been trying to move the dog out of the way and things got out of hand. But Officer Rodriguez testified that Marcus had admitted to kicking Benny intentionally because he was annoyed. The lawyer tried to argue that Benny was already disabled and therefore the damage was minimal. The prosecutor shut that down immediately, pointing out that harming a disabled animal was actually considered an aggravating factor in this state. The judge was an older woman with gray hair and glasses. She listened to everything with an expression that gave nothing away. When it was time for sentencing, she looked at Marcus with something that might have been discussed. "Mr. Henderson," she said, "you deliberately harmed a defenseless, disabled animal because you were mildly inconvenienced. You showed no remorse at the scene. You laughed at your sister's distress. And your defense has been to minimize the victim because of his disability, as if that somehow makes your actions less cruel. It makes them more cruel." She sentenced him to 18 months in prison and 5 years of probation after that. He was banned from owning or being around animals for life. He was ordered to pay restitution for Benny's medical bills. And he was required to complete an anger management program and community service at an animal shelter, though that last part was suspended because of the animal ban. My mother screamed when the sentence was read. She had to be escorted out of the courtroom by bailiffs. My father just sat there, staring at the floor. Marcus looked at me with pure hatred as they led him away in handcuffs. "This isn't over," he mouthed. I stared back without flinching. "Yes, it is." The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. My family cut me off completely. My mother sent me a letter disowning me. My father changed his will to remove me entirely. Aunts and uncles who had sent me birthday cards every year suddenly forgot I existed. Cousins who had been my childhood friends blocked me on every platform. I grieved that loss. I won't pretend I didn't. These were people I had loved my entire life, people I had made memories with, people I had trusted. And they had chosen my brother, the one who kicked a disabled dog for fun, over me. They had chosen cruelty over compassion. They had shown me exactly who they were. But here's the thing about losing people who would defend animal abuse. You're not really losing much. You're gaining clarity. You're gaining space in your life for people who actually share your values. You're gaining freedom from the constant pressure to minimize your own feelings to protect someone else's ego. Benny recovered beautifully. His paws healed straight and strong. He learned to use his wheelchair again with the new boots protecting his feet. He was more cautious around strangers now, which broke my heart, but he was still the same sweet, goofy dog who loved belly rubs and peanut butter and sleeping at the foot of my bed. 6 months after Marcus went to prison, I got a job offer in another state. Better pay, better weather, better everything. I took it without hesitation. There was nothing left for me in my hometown. No family, no memories I wanted to keep, nothing but the ghost of relationships that had died the moment my brother's boot connected with my dog. I packed up my apartment, loaded Benny into his special car seat, and drove 16 hours to my new life. We stopped at rest areas every few hours so he could stretch and drink water and get some fresh air. He seemed to understand that something important was happening. He stayed calm the entire drive, just watching the landscape change through the window. My new apartment was on the first floor, specifically because of Benny. No stairs to navigate. Easy access to a grassy area where he could do his business. Neighbors who cooed over his wheelchair instead of staring or making cruel comments. It felt like a fresh start for both of us. I started over in every way. New job, new friends, new routines. I found a support group for pet owners of disabled animals and discovered a whole community of people who understood exactly what it meant to fight for a creature the world had written off. I made friends who came to visit and got down on the floor to play with Benny like he was the most normal dog in the world. A year after the move, I started dating someone. His name was James and he was a veterinary technician at the clinic where Benny got his checkups. The first time I brought Benny in, James spent 20 minutes adjusting his wheelchair and showing me a better way to secure the straps. He didn't treat Benny like a burden or a project. He treated him like a patient who deserved the same quality of care as any other animal. Our first date was at a dog-friendly brewery. Benny came with us because James insisted. He said any relationship that couldn't include my dog wasn't a relationship worth having. We sat outside in the sunshine, drinking craft beer and watching Benny roll around on the grass in his chair, perfectly content. James looked at me with something soft in his eyes and said, "He's really lucky to have you." I said we were lucky to have each other. James moved in 8 months later. He came with 2 cats who were initially suspicious of Benny but eventually decided he was acceptable. We became one of those ridiculous pet families with more animals than humans and hair on every surface and emergency vet funds built into our monthly budget. It was chaotic and messy and absolutely perfect. 2 years after the trial, my mother reached out. Marcus was getting out of prison early for good behavior and she wanted me to reconcile with him. She said he had changed. She said prison had humbled him. She said family needed to stick together no matter what. She said Benny was just a dog and it was time to move on. I wrote back one sentence. "Do not contact me again." Then I blocked her number, her email, and every social media account she had. I did the same for every family member who had sided with Marcus. It was the final cut, the last string connecting me to people who thought animal cruelty was forgivable if the perpetrator shared your DNA. 3 years after the incident, Benny started having health problems. His back legs, already paralyzed, developed pressure sores from the wheelchair. His kidneys weren't functioning as well as they should. The vet said it was probably related to the original accident, damage that had been slowly progressing all this time. They gave him 6 months to a year. I spent those final months making sure every day was perfect for him. Special treats. New toys. Long slow walks in his chair through the park where he could sniff every flower and greet every friendly dog. James came with us every time, pushing the chair when my arms got tired, carrying Benny when the terrain got too rough for wheels. Benny passed away on a Tuesday afternoon in April, 5 years after my brother kicked him. He was in my arms, surrounded by love, comfortable and safe. James was there. The vet who had cared for him since the accident was there. We told him what a good boy he was and how much we loved him and how grateful we were for every moment we got to spend with him. His tail wagged weakly even at the end. That was just who he was. I scattered his ashes in the park where we took our daily walks. James planted a small rose bush near the spot. We visit every week, even now, even though it's been 3 years since he's been gone. I tell him about my life. About the new rescue dog we adopted, another wheelchair user named Daisy who has the same sweet temperament he had. About the work I'm doing with the Disabled Pet Support Group, which has grown into a full non-profit organization. About all the dogs we've helped and the people we've connected and the difference we've made. Marcus got out of prison eventually. I heard through the grapevine that he struggled to find work and housing with a felony conviction on his record. I heard he bounced from couch to couch, unable to maintain relationships because of his temper and his entitlement. I heard my parents kept bailing him out financially until they couldn't afford to anymore. I heard he blamed me for all of it, told anyone who would listen that his sister had ruined his life over a stupid dog. I felt nothing when I heard these things. Not satisfaction, not pity, not anger. Just nothing. He had become irrelevant to my life, a cautionary tale I occasionally mentioned when people asked about my family situation. I was asked about my family situation. Oh, I would say, I don't have much contact with them. There was an incident with my disabled dog and they chose the wrong side. People usually nodded like they understood, even when they couldn't possibly understand the full weight of it. The non-profit I started, Wheels of Love, became my passion. We help people afford mobility devices for their disabled pets. We connect new owners with support groups and resources. We educate the public about the quality of life disabled animals can have when they're given proper care. We fight against the assumption that a pet who can't walk or see or hear is somehow less worthy of love and protection. Every year on the anniversary of the incident, I make a donation to a local animal shelter in Benny's name. Every year on the anniversary of his death, I plant flowers in the memorial garden we created in our backyard. James never forgets either date. He marks them on our calendar and makes sure we have time to remember and honor what Benny meant to both of us. I spoke at a conference last year about animal cruelty laws and the importance of prosecuting offenders even when the victim is just a pet. The room was full of veterinarians, animal control officers, lawyers, and advocates. I told Benny's story from beginning to end. When I showed the photos from the incident, several people in the audience cried. When I described the moment I knew I had to choose between my dog and my family, you could have heard a pin drop. Someone asked during the Q&A how I found the strength to go through with it. How I managed to cut off my entire family for an animal. I told them it wasn't really a choice. When you see cruelty happen and you have the power to stop it, to seek justice, to protect the victim, you either do it or you become complicit. My family wanted me to be complicit. They wanted me to minimize the harm, excuse the perpetrator, prioritize blood over compassion. I couldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Benny taught me what unconditional love looked like. He had every reason to give up after the accident. His body was broken, his mobility stolen, his life completely changed. But he adapted. He learned to use the wheelchair. He found joy in every small thing, a sunny spot on the carpet, a particularly good treat, a scratch behind the ears. He never complained, never seemed to feel sorry for himself, never stopped wagging his tail. When my brother kicked him, when he called him useless, when he broke his little paws, he wasn't just hurting my dog. He was attacking everything Benny represented. Resilience. Adaptation. The radical idea that value doesn't come from physical ability. That being different doesn't make you less than. That every life, no matter how limited or challenging, deserves protection and respect. My family couldn't see that. They saw a broken dog taking up space. They saw my devotion to him as embarrassing, as excessive, as misplaced. They thought I should have euthanized him after the accident and gotten a normal pet. They thought my refusal to do so was proof of something wrong with me, some inability to accept reality. But I was the one who saw reality clearly. I saw a dog who wanted to live and had the capacity for joy. I saw a creature who trusted me to take care of him and never once let me down. I saw love in its purest form, love that didn't depend on what the other could do for you, love that existed simply because existing together was enough. When I had to choose between that love and the people who couldn't understand it, the choice was obvious. When I had to choose between justice for a vulnerable creature and peace with those who excused his abuser, the choice was clear. When I had to choose between my own conscience and my family's approval, I chose my conscience. And I would do it again. 1,000 times. Without hesitation. 5 years after moving to my new city, I got married. James proposed in the park where Benny's ashes were scattered. It felt right, having our beginning where another chapter had ended. We had a small ceremony with just close friends and our animals. Daisy rolled down the aisle in her wheelchair, flower petals attached to the wheels. Our cats supervised from a safe distance. No family from my side attended because there was no family from my side anymore. But I didn't feel their absence. The room was full of people who loved me for exactly who I was, people who had seen me at my worst and stayed anyway, people who would never ask me to minimize cruelty or excuse abuse for the sake of keeping the peace. James's family welcomed me without reservation. His parents treated me like a daughter from the first moment we met. His siblings included me in group chats and holiday plans and sibling rivalries that felt foreign but wonderful. When they heard about my background, about what happened with Marcus and Benny, they were horrified on my behalf. His mother hugged me and said, "You did the right thing. Not everyone has that courage. Courage. That's what she called it. But it never felt like courage to me. It felt like necessity. It felt like the only possible response to witnessing deliberate cruelty against something innocent. It felt like the bare minimum of human decency. Maybe that's the real tragedy of my family. Not that they lost me, but that they genuinely believed protecting an abuser was the normal, expected, family thing to do. They thought I was the aberration, the one who had lost perspective, the one who needed to be brought back into line. They couldn't see that their perspective was the problem. That normalizing cruelty to protect family harmony wasn't love. It was cowardice. 7 years after the incident, I got a message on social media from someone claiming to be Marcus's daughter. I didn't know he had a daughter. She was 16 years old and had found me through some detective work with public records and old photos. She wanted to meet me, wanted to understand what had happened, wanted to hear my side of the story. I agreed cautiously. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. She looked like him, which was jarring, but her eyes were softer. She told me her mother had divorced Marcus when she was 10 because of his temper. She told me she had seen him hit animals before, cats in the neighborhood, birds that landed too close. She told me her grandparents, my parents, had always excused his behavior, told her she was exaggerating, told her boys would be boys. She was crying by the end. She said she had always felt like something was wrong with her because her own family didn't believe her. She said finding out about the trial, about someone finally holding Marcus accountable, had changed something in her. She said she wanted to thank me for standing up when no one else would. I hugged her, this girl I had never met, this piece of family I didn't know existed. I told her she wasn't wrong. She had never been wrong. The adults in her life had failed her just like they had failed me. But she was old enough now to make her own choices, to build her own life, to decide who deserved to be in it. We've stayed in touch. She went to college for psychology, wants to work with children from abusive homes. She sends me pictures of her own rescue dog, a 3-legged pit bull named Phoenix. She visited last summer and spent a week with me and James and Daisy. She played with Daisy's wheelchair like it was the most normal thing in the world. Because for people like us, it is. 8 years after the incident, I published a memoir. It was called Rolling Forward and it told the whole story. Benny's accident, his recovery, my brother's attack, the trial, the family rupture, the rebuilding. I didn't name Marcus or anyone else by their real names, but anyone who knew the story would recognize it. The book sold better than I expected. It hit some bestseller lists, got reviewed in major publications, became required reading in some animal law courses. I did interviews and podcasts and speaking events. Every time, people asked the same questions. How did you find the strength? Don't you miss your family? Do you regret anything? The answers were always the same. I didn't find strength, I just did what had to be done. I miss the family I thought I had, not the family that actually existed. I regret nothing except not seeing sooner who they really were. One interviewer asked if I thought Marcus was truly evil or just damaged. I thought about it for a long time before answering. I think he's someone who was never taught that other creatures matter, I said. Someone who was raised to believe his convenience trumped everyone else's safety. Someone who was protected from consequences until he couldn't distinguish between acceptable and monstrous behavior. Is that evil? I don't know. But it's dangerous. And I'm glad I got away from it. 10 years after the incident, I got a letter. It had been forwarded through several addresses before reaching me. The handwriting was shaky but recognizable. My mother. She was dying. Cancer, advanced, only a few months left. She wanted to see me before the end. She wanted to explain her side of things. She wanted closure. I held that letter for 2 weeks before deciding what to do. James never pressured me either way. He said whatever I needed was what we would do. If I wanted to go, he would come with me. If I wanted to ignore it, he would support that too. In the end, I wrote back. One page, careful words chosen after many drafts. I forgive you for choosing Marcus. I understand that you believed you were protecting your child and that maternal instinct is powerful. But you also need to understand what you chose. You chose to protect someone who deliberately hurt something defenseless. You chose to excuse cruelty because the victim was just an animal. You chose to cut off your other child rather than hold your son accountable. Those choices had consequences. I built a life without you in it. I am happy. I am loved. I do not regret the choices I made. I do not wish you suffering. But I will not pretend that what happened doesn't matter, that we can have a reconciliation built on ignoring the truth. If you want to see me, you need to acknowledge what Marcus did was wrong. You need to say it out loud, with no qualifications, no minimizing, no but he's family. If you can do that, I will come. If you cannot, I hope you find peace in your own way. She never responded. 3 months later, I got word that she had passed. The funeral was held in my hometown. I did not attend. My father died 2 years after that, alone, having pushed away most of his remaining family with his bitterness and blame. Marcus is still out there somewhere. I don't track him. I don't care where he is or what he's doing. He exists in my memory as a lesson, nothing more. A lesson about how cruelty reveals character, how crisis shows you who people really are, how blood relation means nothing when values are incompatible. Benny has been gone for 8 years now. Daisy is 11, slowing down, her own health starting to fail. I know I will lose her soon and it will break my heart all over again. But I also know that I have given her the best life possible, just like I gave Benny. I know that every day she's had with us has been a day of love and safety and joy. That's what this whole story comes down to, really. Not revenge. Not justice. Not even family drama. It comes down to this simple truth: we are defined by what we're willing to protect and what we're willing to excuse. My brother was willing to kick a disabled dog because it annoyed him. My family was willing to excuse it because they valued keeping the peace over confronting evil. I was willing to lose everything to protect something small and helpless that depended on me. And I would do it again. Every time. Without hesitation. My brother kicked my dog who uses a wheelchair because he couldn't walk properly. He called him useless. He broke his little paws. And in doing so, he showed me exactly who he was. The best gift he ever gave me was revealing the truth about my family. The best decision I ever made was choosing to see it. 12 years after the incident, I stand at my kitchen window watching Daisy navigate the backyard in her upgraded wheelchair. James is beside me, gray starting to show at his temples, still as kind as the day I met him. We have 2 new foster dogs in the living room, both recovering from neglect, both learning what safety feels like. This is my family now. The one I built from scratch after the one I was born into crumbled. The one held together by shared values instead of shared blood. The one where every creature, no matter how broken or disabled or different, is treated as worthy of love and protection. My brother kicked my dog who uses a wheelchair. And I built an empire of compassion on the ruins of that betrayal. That's my ending. That's my victory. That's my life. And it belongs to me. The phone rang one ordinary Tuesday morning. I almost didn't answer because I was in the middle of feeding the foster dogs. But something made me pick up. It was a number I didn't recognize, a local area code from my hometown that I hadn't seen in years. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Is this Mia Henderson?" The voice was professional, clipped. A lawyer's voice. "It is. This is Richard Stein from Stein & Associates. I'm handling the estate of Marcus Henderson. I'm afraid I have some news." My stomach dropped. Not because I cared about Marcus, but because anything involving him usually meant chaos and pain. "What kind of news?" Your brother passed away 3 weeks ago. You're listed as the sole beneficiary in his will. I had to sit down. Not because of grief. Because of the absurdity. Marcus, who had told me this isn't over when they led him away in handcuffs. Marcus, who had blamed me for ruining his life. Marcus, who had kicked my dog and laughed about it. That Marcus had left me everything he had. I don't understand, I said. We haven't spoken in over 12 years. He hated me. The lawyer cleared his throat. I can't speak to his motivations. I can only tell you what the will says. You inherit his assets, which include approximately $47,000 in savings, a vehicle, and some personal effects. There's also a letter. A letter. He insisted it be delivered to you after his death. It's sealed. I haven't read it. I didn't want the money. I didn't want anything from Marcus. But I wanted that letter. I wanted to know what he could possibly have to say after everything that had happened. Send it all, I said. I'll decide what to do with the assets later. The package arrived a week later. A thick manila envelope containing legal documents, vehicle titles, bank statements, and a single white envelope with my name written in Marcus's handwriting. I recognized the sharp angles, the aggressive slant. He had written my name the same way he did everything else. Like he was attacking the paper. James offered to be there when I read it. I said no. This was something I needed to do alone. I waited until he left for work and the house was quiet, just me and the dogs, and then I opened the envelope. The letter was 5 pages long, handwritten, dated 2 months before his death. Mia. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Cancer, probably. The doctors gave me 6 months, but I'm guessing I won't make it that long. I've never been good at following predictions. I thought about not writing this. Thought about dying without saying anything and letting you wonder forever what I was thinking. That seemed like a good revenge for a while. But then I realized you probably wouldn't wonder at all. You'd probably just shrug and go on with your life because you stopped thinking about me a long time ago. And that's worse somehow. I've had a lot of time to think these past few years. Prison does that to you. So does being alone. So does dying. And I keep coming back to that day. The dog. The kick. Your face when you found him. For years I told myself you overreacted. That it was just a dog. That dogs get kicked all the time and they're fine. That a disabled dog wasn't worth the prison time, the felony record, the destroyed family. I told myself you chose an animal over your own brother and that made you the monster, not me. But here's the thing about dying. You can't lie to yourself anymore. All the stories you tell yourself to feel better, they stop working. And when they stopped working, I had to face what I actually did. I kicked a helpless animal because it annoyed me for 30 seconds. I laughed when it yelped. I called it useless because it couldn't walk. I broke its paws and then I blamed you for the consequences. That's who I was that day. That's who I had always been, really. Just usually not so obviously. Mom and Dad taught me that the world owed me things. That I was special. That anything that inconvenienced me was wrong by definition. They never told me no. They never held me accountable. And when I finally did something bad enough that someone outside the family noticed, they circled the wagons and pretended I was the victim. You didn't buy it. You saw what I was. And you chose to stand against it even though it cost you everything. I hated you for that. Hated you more than I've ever hated anyone. Because your choice forced me to see myself, and I didn't like what I saw. Prison was hard. Not just the physical part, but the part where you sit with yourself for 18 months and can't escape your own thoughts. I met a guy in there, another animal cruelty case, who told me his story. He had beaten his dog to death because it wouldn't stop barking. He told it like it was nothing. Like the dog had deserved it. And I listened to him and I thought, That's me. That's what I sound like. That's what I am. I got out and tried to rebuild. Couldn't hold a job. Couldn't maintain relationships. Couldn't stop being angry all the time. People kept disappointing me and I kept reacting badly and I kept ending up alone. Mom died without forgiving you. Dad too. They went to their graves believing you were wrong and I was wronged. I let them believe it because it was easier than telling them the truth. But I knew. Deep down, I always knew. The dog. Benny, right? I remember his name now. I looked up articles about him after I got out. Found your nonprofit. Found the interviews where you talked about what I did. You never used my name but everyone knew. He looked happy in the pictures. Rolling around in that chair like it was the most natural thing in the world. You were right. He wasn't useless. He was just different. And different didn't deserve what I did to him. I can't apologize to Benny. I can't undo the damage. I can't erase the pain I caused him or you. All I can do is admit that you were right and I was wrong. You were right to call the cops. You were right to testify against me. You were right to cut off our family when they took my side. You were right about all of it. I'm leaving you everything I have. It's not much. 40-something thousand, a beat-up truck, some stuff that probably isn't worth anything. I don't have anyone else to leave it to. I don't have kids, don't have friends, don't have a partner. Mom and Dad are gone. Cousins haven't spoken to me in years. But it's also an apology. The only one I have left to give. Use the money for your wheelchair dogs or whatever. Use it to help people who deserve it more than I ever did. Or burn it. I don't care. It's yours. I'm sorry, Mia. I'm sorry for Benny. I'm sorry for everything. Marcus. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it down and stared at the wall for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated or satisfied or any of the things people might expect me to feel after getting an apology I had long since stopped wanting. I just felt tired. Tired of carrying this story. Tired of being the person who did the hard thing while her family did nothing. Tired of explaining why I chose a dog over my brother like it was some grand moral failing instead of basic human decency. James came home to find me sitting on the couch with the letter in my hands and Daisy curled up at my feet. He read it without comment. When he finished, he sat down next to me and took my hand. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to donate the money to Wheels of Love," I said. "Every penny. In Benny's name." He nodded. "That sounds right. And then I want to let it go. All of it. The anger, the hurt, the complicated feelings about whether this letter changes anything. I want to be done." He squeezed my hand. "Then be done." The donation was anonymous. I didn't want credit. I didn't want people connecting Marcus's money to my organization and asking questions. I just wanted it gone, transformed into something good, something that would help other dogs like Benny and other people like me. The letter I kept. Not as a trophy or a reminder or a source of comfort. Just as a piece of history. Evidence that in the end, even the people who hurt us the most can sometimes find clarity. It doesn't undo the damage. It doesn't make the trauma disappear. But it closes a door that had been hanging open for too long. 13 years after my brother kicked my dog, I finally felt free. Not because he apologized. Not because he died. Not because I won and he lost. Because I realized I had stopped needing anything from him a long time ago. His letter was just the final confirmation that my healing had never depended on his redemption. I had built my own peace. My own family. My own life. And no letter, no matter how sincere, could add to what I had already made for myself. Daisy died 6 months after the letter arrived. Peacefully, in my arms, just like Benny. She was 13 years old and had lived her entire life surrounded by love. I scattered her ashes next to Benny's and planted another rose bush in the garden. We adopted 2 more wheelchair dogs after that. And then 3 more. Our house became a sanctuary for the broken and forgotten, the ones other people gave up on. We renovated the garage into a proper rehabilitation space. We hired part-time help. We expanded the nonprofit until it was helping hundreds of animals every year. 15 years after the incident, I got an award from the National Humane Society. Outstanding Achievement in Animal Welfare. I stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people and told Benny's story one more time. How a disabled beagle in a wheelchair taught me more about resilience and love than any human ever had. How losing my family made space for a better one. How the worst day of my life became the foundation for my life's work. In the audience, James was crying. Beside him was Marcus's daughter, now a grown woman with her own rescue dog at her feet. Beside her was a whole row of people I had met through the nonprofit, fellow animal advocates who had become my closest friends. This was my family now. The one I chose. The one that chose me back. My brother kicked my dog who uses a wheelchair because he couldn't walk properly. He called him useless. He broke his little paws. And I turned that cruelty into a legacy of compassion that will outlive us all. 20 years after the incident, I am 62 years old. James and I are retired, living in a small house on several acres of land, surrounded by animals who have nowhere else to go. We have taken in over 200 disabled pets over the years. Some stayed forever. Some healed enough to find new homes. All of them were loved. The nonprofit runs itself now, led by a team of passionate young people who believe in the mission as fiercely as I ever did. Marcus's daughter is on the board. She brings her own children to volunteer, teaching the next generation that every creature deserves compassion. I think about Benny every day. His face. His wagging tail. The way he would roll his chair through the kitchen looking for dropped treats. The trust in his eyes that never wavered, even after everything he had been through. He taught me that disabilities don't diminish worth. That love is a choice we make every day. That standing up for the vulnerable is never wrong, even when it costs us everything. My brother kicked my dog who uses a wheelchair. And in the end, that dog changed the world more than Marcus ever could. That's the legacy I'm proud of. That's the life I built. That's the ending Benny deserved. And it's the ending I gave him.